everyone. On our call today, we have, actually, should we do roll call first?
I'm happy to do a roll call.
That'd be great, thank you.
First, we have Chair Carter,
Here.
Vice Chair Bluth,
Here.
Committee Member Connor,
Here.
Committee Member Hunter,
Present.
Committee Member Rath. Oh, no. Committee Member Polly. Oh, you're muted.
Here.
Thank you. Committee Member Tregenza.
Here.
Thank you. That is a full house out of the 6 committee members we have. I apologize. Committee Member Rath is no longer a committee member with us on our ARC. And for staff present, we have myself, Jennifer Cleary, and Community Development Director, Kim Cole.
Great, thank you. No, Linda's not with us anymore. Okay, let's open the consent agenda. And is there anybody who would like to make a motion on the consent agenda?
I guess I have a question for Kim on one of the, for the committee notes on the 19th of August, there's only 2 of us. So how do we vote on that? Do we need to, or we just wrap it up with the notes on the 5th?
Oh, that's a good point. I think the 2 people were there could vote for the minutes, and then we'll go from there. And because the rest need to abstain, because we just called that we didn't have a quorum for that meeting because the agenda item got tabled. So I think the 2 committee members that were there, Bluth and Hunter, can vote on the minutes, and the rest of the members should just abstain because we were in the process of canceling that meeting and you weren't there.
So should we vote on the minutes separately, or how should we do that?
I would recommend that. Let's take 2 separate motions, one for August 5th, because I'm sure more members are going to vote, and then a separate vote for August 19th. That's a good idea.
Okay. So I'll take a motion for the first, for the minutes for August 5th.
Okay, I move that we approve the minutes as written for the meeting scheduled and conducted on August 5th, 2020.
Great. Is there a second for that?
I'll second that.
Okay. Who got the second on that one?
I captured that as Committee Member Tregenza.
Great. Is there any discussion on that?
I don't believe a discussion is necessary, but I can continue with the roll call vote for the August 5th minute.
Okay.
Chair Carter.
Aye.
Vice Chair Bluth.
Aye.
Committee Member Connor.
Aye.
Committee Member Hunter.
Aye.
Committee Member Polly.
Committee Member Polly, if it looks like you were not in attendance on August 5th, so the correct vote would be an abstention.
I think you're muted.
I'll abstain.
And Committee Member Tregenza.
Aye.
Great, thank you.
So then I'll take a motion for the minutes on August the 19th.
I'll make a
I
motion.
move
Oh, do you want me to make the motion?
Go ahead, Bob.
Okay. I'll make the motion that we approve the minutes as written for 19 August.
Is there a second for
I'll
that?
second it.
Great.
I'll second it.
Is there any further discussion? Okay,
All right, and for the roll call, we have Chair Carter,
I'll abstain.
Vice Chair Bluth,
Aye.
and Committee Member Connor,
Abstain.
Committee Member Hunter,
Aye.
Committee Member Pauly,
Abstain.
and Committee Member Tregenza.
Abstain.
Great, thank you.
Great. So that's the end of the consent agenda. Next, we're going to open it up for public comments for items not on the agenda. At this time, we will see if there is anybody who would like to make comments to the ARC.
I will announce the call-in number if you'd like to make a public comment. We do recommend watching on YouTube as it has the shortest delay. Also, as a reminder, please turn your volume down on the device you're watching on to eliminate feedback. That dial-in number is 831-582-6500. Once again, 582-6500 is the number you want to contact. Once you enter into the call, you will be muted automatically. Press *5 to let us know that you're ready to speak, and we will call on you when the public comment period is open. Thank you.
Do we have any callers?
There are currently no callers, and I've confirmed the delay can be between 10 seconds to 30 seconds on YouTube.
Okay. Well, I think what we'll do is we'll move on, and then if we have anybody that calls in, we'll listen to their comments.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Then we will open our first public appearance item, which is consider 6 Lower Ragsdale for architecture review application ARP 20-028 for a new adolescent behavioral health care center, and tree removal application ART 20-027 for 10 tree removals. This is a really exciting project, and I'm excited to hear about it. Do we have a staff report?
We do. Let me just get my screen. Can everybody see my screen? The
Yeah.
presentation? Great. And I'll just put it to full screen mode. Thank you, Architectural Review Committee. This afternoon, you have an opportunity to review one of the most interesting projects that I've seen come forward in the city of Monterey. The project site is located at 6 Lower Ragsdale. It's proposed by Montage Health, and the Montage Health refers to this project as the Ohana project. This afternoon, you're considering 2 actions, and they're basically approval of resolutions for preliminary and final architectural review of the project with conditions of approval, and you're also considering approval of a tree removal application. So the project site is located at 6 Lower Ragsdale and is highlighted in yellow on your screen. And as you can see, it extends from Lower Ragsdale all the way to Highway 68. The site's a little over 10 acres in size. Adjacent properties include office building to the north that you can see on the screen, an office building to the left, and actually a vacant parcel to the right, and then an additional office building a little bit further over. So it's located within the business park that's predominantly built out today. I just wanted to give you a glimpse of the project and sort of the vision of the project, and you're going to hear a lot more about that this afternoon. But I think as you look at the project, you'll see a substantial emphasis has been placed on this being a mental health facility and integrating the building with its objective as a mental health facility and aiding people's recovery. You see lots of windows and light and some really interesting spaces for treatment to occur. So it's a medical office building with extended care. By extended care, it means that one wing of this building will have 16 residential beds that'll be overnight for a 90-day stay. So the majority of the building is a typical office building with a very small area dedicated towards these extended care stays. It's a family-centered adolescent behavioral health care center. It includes offices, conference rooms, outpatient therapy, a kitchen and dining hall for patients that are in treatment, gymnasium, and the 16 residential beds. And so this is a bird's eye view of the site. You can see Lower Ragsdale at the top of your screen, sort of that curved roadway at the very top. There's two driveways that access the property. There's actually a shared easement with the adjoining property where the driveway will serve both properties, and then a new driveway located sort of at the northeastern end of the lot. And I think as you look at this project, one of the things you're going to learn about is the project was sited on the relatively flat portions of the lot. The site's about over 10 acres in size, but has some pretty significant topography as it slopes down towards Highway 68. So you can see the parking areas are more towards Lower Ragsdale and the adjacent property, and the building is really centered in that top left corner of the property. And here's just some glimpses of the project. You can get a sense of those open spaces that I was presenting and discussing. It's a fairly large building. It's 55,000 square feet. I'm going to walk through the floor plan with you, and it's basically a stepped floor plan. The lowest level is the residential program, or those 16 beds. The mid-level includes group therapy spaces, the kitchen, cafeteria, gym, and some mechanical and electrical spaces. And the upper level is really the public entry, or the public function and outpatient. So this is the floor plan of the lowest level. These are where the 16 residential beds are located, and that's on the portion of the building that's closest to Highway 68, and it's 1 story. The mid-level, you can see here, is sort of on the curves of the building. And then the upper level is really that more public area of the building that includes the entry as well as the outpatient services. I did want to give some background because recently we haven't had a lot of projects that have gone through an extensive, in fact, we've had 4 various public meetings on this project before it ended up at architectural review. And that's because this project really triggered only things that the Planning Commission and ultimately the City Council could approve. The first was a zoning amendment to allow extended care. The City Council approved the second reading of that just last night, and it's becoming law. And that's to allow the 16 residential beds. In addition to that, or implementing that, the extended care required a use permit, which were noticed public hearings in front of the Planning Commission and ultimately the City Council because of the zoning change. In addition, they looked at the portions of the building that are located on 25% slope, or the portions of the project on that area. And that's because our general plan requires that projects that extend onto areas of 25% slope obtain Planning Commission approval. Ultimately, that obtained both Planning Commission and Council approval because of the zoning change. There was also a variance that typically would have just been handled at Planning Commission, but both the Planning Commission and Council acted on it because of the zoning change. You'll find out that the majority of this project is at the 35-foot height limit, but because how the building stacks or as accessed from one level to another, there's some areas that exceed that. So I wanted to walk through that with you. The red areas show the areas of the project site that exceed the 25% slope. You can see the majority of the building has been pushed away from the very steep slopes at the bottom of the property and those red areas that are highlighted as well. The variance, the areas shaded on the building footprint are the only areas that exceed 35 feet in height. And the architect prepared section drawings that we presented to both the Planning Commission and Council to show those where those height exceedances are. And you can see I have section A1, A2, A3, and A4 highlighted, which corresponds to the following drawing. So we'll start sort of on the left side of the building at A1 and wrap around. So on A1, there is a section of the building that extends up to 50 feet. That's taken for the most restrictive measurement. We take it from either existing or proposed, which is ever more restrictive. And you can see where that 50-foot height requirement or height limit is met. And that's predominantly because it's providing access between the various levels through an elevator in that area. Oh, I went too fast. Section A3, you can see that's just about a foot over the 35 feet. Section A4 is about 7 feet over height. And here's section 2, which is about 11 feet over height. As I mentioned, these issues have already been pre-approved by the city. And this afternoon, you're really looking at the architectural review of the project. These findings are very familiar to the Architectural Review Committee. One of the findings you look at is the proposed siting form, mass, and architectural style are appropriate for the project site, the immediate area, and the city. And you can see just a glimpse here of how that building will wrap around the site and have really nice windows and sort of embrace the landscape that is going to be provided. This is the site plan we just reviewed. And the architect prepared some interesting perspectives of the form and mass, sort of views off-site of the project. And this is the view from Lower Ragsdale. You remember Lower Ragsdale sort of curves right at the top of the project site. At the top picture, you can see there's no building. And then in the middle picture, you can see the building with the proposed landscape plan and the additional trees that are proposed to be installed. And then the lowest photograph shows the building without any landscaping. And so you can see that the building from Lower Ragsdale appears generally as one story with a two-story element on the one side. This is the view from the adjacent parking lot, and this is that driveway that's shared with the adjacent property. And this will be the public entrance to the facility. And you can see it's a one-story, very inviting entrance to the overall site. The other important view is Highway 68 is a scenic corridor. The overall project is over 310 feet from Highway 68. You can see that slope we were showing in plan view, and you can sort of see that steep slope. The one-story residential portion of the wing, you can see it in the trees removed version at the bottom. You can see that one-story element on the top of the ridge. And then in the middle photograph, you can see with where they're proposing to do additional tree planting, because they also want these rooms to be very private for treatment services. So staff is recommending in this finding that the form and mass are unique. We believe that the Serpentine building has various levels to address the site topography. It really takes advantage of the topography versus cutting in a rectilinear building and doing some very large cuts. There is a pretty significant topographical difference between Lower Ragsdale and the project site, which reduces the mass of the building as viewed from the street. And the proposed buildings are a significant distance from Highway 68, and the building is wing is one story. And it's for these reasons that we're recommending that first finding is satisfied. The next finding really looks at this concept of unreasonably impairing the views, privacy, or living environment currently enjoyed by other properties in the vicinity. So the project site, as you're well aware, is in a business park. The building with the shared driveway immediately to the west is about 100 feet from the proposed project, and the building across Lower Ragsdale that sits considerably higher than the project site is about 200 feet to the north. The project does reduce views from those buildings of the mountains across Highway 68. But as staff really considered this, it is a business park. There's considerable distance is provided between the buildings, and the proposed building is near the existing grades on the site. And we don't really see justification to dig the building in further, to do further grading, to drop it further in a hole. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. So we think it's a reasonable view change. And the privacy and living environment, those impacts are de minimis. These are public office spaces. They're very far apart, and we don't see any privacy or living environment impacts. And here's just a close-up of those two buildings. The next piece that you look at is the exterior finish, colors, materials, landscaping, fencing, and any exterior features. So the building is primarily a laminated timber building. It will have wood fins that sort of wrap the building. Underneath the building, where we have some exposed underfloor areas, they are proposing a metal mesh screen. It's not very visible. And it will have a metal seam roof. And the glass examples are provided on the bottom as well. So the purpose of this drawing is just to give you a black and white version of the building materials. It calls out that the roof will be standing seam metal. The integrated wood screen system, you can start to see those vertical lines on the building, and that's what that represents. The glazing or the windows, you can see sort of the light gray rectangles on the building. The metal mesh screen is only visible in very few locations and is really that underfloor area that I mentioned. And there are some wood decks on the property. While this drawing may look very sterile, I think when you look at the actual colors and the natural sort of how it embraces the environment, staff believes that this really fulfills the city's goal of having natural materials in the Ryan Ranch area. The landscape plan was prepared by Bellinger Foster Steinmetz, and the landscape architect is on the phone. There are a series of trees that are proposed. You can see there's some fairly large box trees proposed, 24-inch boxes, 60-inch boxes, and the coast live oaks, they're proposing a variety of sizes in order to achieve that clustering effect. They also, interestingly enough, call out a sensory planting garden, and I listed the proposed plant list for the shrubs and ground cover, the native grasses, sort of the under canopy, and internal courtyard planting. And the landscape architect is on the phone and can answer more questions. The light fixtures, there's a variety of light fixtures proposed. There's a pole light, and you can see there's about 24 pole lights that are proposed predominantly in the parking lot areas. This the very top graphic sort of shows you the configuration of that light. There are 62 bollards that will be placed along the walking paths, and they're basically a solid base with a light fixture underneath this cap. There's some recessed lighting adjacent with sort of the hallway corridors, and you can see the cut sheet for the recessed lighting. There's rail lighting, and you can see the light glow of the light. And there are some spotlights to feature the sort of in the interior courtyards, some of the trees and some of the features. I didn't put it on this presentation because it's impossible to read at this scale, but they did have a photometric study prepared that guided the number and types of lights that they're proposing. And the photometric study, when they work with their lighting engineer, ensures there aren't overly bright spots on the site or areas that are dark or would be problematic. So there is a detailed photometric study that's included in the online plan set. There are some decorative walls sort of along some of the pathways. They gave us some examples of finished concrete walls, the cork and steel planter edging, and the wood farm garden planter walls. The last finding that you have to make is that the project is substantially consistent with our general plan and various planning documents. Our general plan calls for this site to be for office development, and we have a lot of medical offices in that area. And we see this as a continuation of that theme. The Ryan Ranch plan has a few design objectives. They want building forms in scale and related to the natural environment, a rich blend of natural materials, earth colors and textures, and simple design and clean expressions. From our perspective, the building form conforms to the site topography, trees are preserved, and the finishes have a lot of natural elements in them with the laminated wood and the wood screen features. And we find the project consistent with that finding. I did want to mention, because this project is within the jurisdiction of the County of Monterey Airport Land Use Commission. We actually started before we even went to Planning Commission or Council with a public hearing in front of the Airport Land Use Commission, and they have determined the project's consistent with the comprehensive land use plan for airport safety. The second permit that you're going to be looking at is the tree removal permit. The site contains a lot of trees, excuse me, and there was an arborist report attached to your report, and the project successfully only removes 10 healthy trees, or 10 trees. There are additionally 2 dead trees that it's removing, but a total of 12, but 10 healthy, and those are denoted by the red X's on this graphic, and you can see they're sort of centered right at the top of this lot. And the findings for decision that you look at, the city's municipal code says, in situations where healthy trees prevent reasonable development of permitted uses, the tree can be approved for removal. And really you're looking at existing development on similar sites in the same zone and having similar topographic and vegetation characteristics shall be considered when determining reasonable development of permitted uses. And I think at this point you understand the development has been concentrated in the relatively flat portions of the lot, which has greatly reduced the developable area, but at the same time really preserved a lot of the trees that are located at the bottom of the lot. There's a very small number of tree removals proposed, 10, in comparison to other projects that we have reviewed in the Ryan Ranch area. And most importantly, we do require replacement plantings. The oaks will be replaced at a 1-to-1 level and are extensively included on the landscape plan. In addition, there are many other trees that were identified on the landscape plan. So with that, we are recommending approval of both resolutions to approve the ARC application and the tree removal application. There are 2 tremendous resources available to you that know this project much better than I do. The project architect, Lori Chambers from NBBJ, is on the phone, as well as Beth with BFS Landscaping. So I'm happy to answer your questions, and I believe Mr. Chambers also has a presentation for you to discuss the project's architecture.
Thank you, Kim. That was excellent. I'm watching the YouTube stream and it's blurry, so I'm wondering if that can get cleared up. It's hard to read the literature and everything that you went through. I just want to make sure we can see it, because for such an important project, I want everybody to be able to read the PowerPoint and what's coming too. Does anybody have any questions for Kim?
I have one question that might end up being answered by the architect, but it does have to do with the metal roof and just, are the I know it's a specific metal roof, but whether or not, what type of glare that may or may not generate. I assume that was looked at by the airport commission or the air at that point, but I'm just curious, yeah, about the impact, maybe even on 68, but yeah.
Yeah, so this is Laurie Chambers with NBBJ, and you know, obviously we spend a fair amount of time talking with the Airport Commission and understanding what their concerns and what they would like us to address or certainly avoid. And they were much more concerned about light being produced by the building, no significant uplights, no significant building lighting. If you notice, much of the lighting is down lighting that we have on there. They were even interested in where you have large glazed areas that you weren't throwing light out from those large glazed areas. We did put out the roof itself, and it is not a high gloss painted metal roof. And it will be a darker color. It is not a high bright white color as well. So we did talk about a number of those things, and of course, property themselves that obviously are more of their concern than something like this, which is not quite as glossy.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions before Lori makes a presentation? Go ahead.
I'm being told there is a problem sharing my screen. And
There we go.
it seems to be generating. So let me know when you can actually see.
Looks like we got it.
So are you seeing the blue cover sheet with the drawing title on it?
Yep.
Okay. Well, first, let me just say thank you all for taking the time to sort of look at this project. And I have heard that this has generated some excitement. And of course, I just represent a very motivated set of design professionals, as well as the client, for what is not just a fantastic building, but it's a fantastic program and a wonderful site. And I just wanted to sort of put it in context as the architect of the site, that the building is only a component of this. And what we're going to talk a little bit about today is some of the ideas behind the design. And is it changing the page? Are you still seeing the Ohana ARC project?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you
There
now
we go.
see an overall site rendering?
Yeah.
So, you know, it was interesting when you start to look at this project in context of what's around it. And I understand that at some of the previous meetings, some of you might have thought that we went a little bonkers and lost our straight edge. And the shape of the building is very deliberate. And I want to talk a little bit about that and the fact that it does respond to certain concerns about embracing space and making the building actually work to support the program. As many of you know, the program is basically happening because of a large donation from Bertie Bialik. Taking a certain amount of that donation for the building itself, and then the operating costs will continue beyond that. So it is the vision of this program for healing adolescents, and really the target client is adolescents in the range of 8 to 18 years old. That's the significant sort of target need that Montage Health really wanted to address in this community. And unfortunately, we found through research that this was a very underserved need. So we wanted to try and look at what does a building do to support the treatment of adolescents. Now, it's a mental health facility, but it is not a clinical, it's not a medical facility. There's not actual clinical procedures going on here. It's therapeutic, it's spaces, and it's a program that will actually support the therapy, of not just the adolescents themselves, but the education for the families and the community. This is part of a Ohana program that actually will outreach into the community and help educate the whole community and support the families. They recognize that the family support for the child is actually going to be very significant in the treatment. So we work very closely with Montage, who are developing a program, have hired a program director, Dr. Susan Swick, that is gathering a team in advance of the building so that when the building is ready, they will already have a presence in the community. And so we work with them to understand what the building actually needs to do. Now, are you seeing my cursor?
Yeah.
So Kim did a great job of kind of explaining the siting, and we've had many discussions with her. And so on the right side of the building is really the entry, and that's where you saw coming off Lower Ragsdale from the right. Now, that right side represents more of the public therapy spaces, classroom side. And I really want to focus on this drawing for a minute here because it sort of shows the whole building stepping down, and it shows the courtyards that we're creating. And this middle finger on level 2 is more of the shared gym dining space. And then the lower residential wing is over on the left side as well. Now, it was very deliberate to sort of step the building and reduce the apparent mass on the site and capture the spaces. This is not a lockdown facility, but it does need to be secure in that these spaces need to be protected. And we also wanted to make use of the landscaping in terms of this is not just therapy spaces and classrooms where everything is done internally. We're really treating this as utilizing the site as part of the therapy. Again, I really appreciate Kim's attention to detail in terms of pointing out that there is actually a sensory garden. And as you come through the entrance on the right side at the higher level, because you actually come onto the site at the highest level, the sensory garden actually extends into the planting that's part of your entry sequence. The experience of this building starts as you walk towards it. And the kind of plants we have there, they contain compounds, the pinene, terpenes, and sequestrines, that actually are compounds that activate your immune system. So we want the building and the landscaping to be an active participant in the treatment of the adolescents. So you walk through the plants, you can touch them, the oils, you can smell them, and they're actually helping you as you go in there. And we realize that even when patients are in for treatment for mental issues, they often have physical issues as well that are associated. So if you're treating their immune system at the same time and helping them heal both ways, it's a win-win for all. So I want to kind of just step back to the site a little bit, because this site really is more about, and the facility, it's more about providing accessible health, but providing an environment where that can come together in a healing environment. And so we spent time on the site. This is actually before we even won the project. We wanted to understand the site to be able to propose to the client how this site might be better used. So our design team went to the site. We wanted to understand it before we could even start to suggest some designs. Kim had mentioned some of the existing trees. This is actually a picture on the site. I think some of you may have been to the site earlier in the year. I understand the trip was canceled for this meeting, but some of you may then know the site from previous visits. What we affectionately call the Beehive Tree. It's one of the larger clumps or groups of trees that is on the site, and it tends to be at the higher portion of the site. And it's a wonderful sort of tree grouping that we are actually keeping. And going back to that circular design, not only did it allow us to kind of embrace the space, it allowed us to embrace the space around trees such as this. So we're preserving this in one of our courtyard spaces. And by the way, it was called the Beehive Tree because there actually was a beehive in that tree. And so it's just sort of, there's a lot of activity on the site. As we spent time on the site, we became acquainted with some of the critters and the snakes and the bees and things like that. So seeing that, seeing the views, feeling the tranquility of the site, wanting to preserve that in that kind of environment was very important to us. And actually, although the rendering not quite the exact tree, this is the location where that tree is going to be surrounded by that building. The left side is actually more of the lobby and the public conference area, because we actually do foresee that this facility will be used to hold meetings for families or the public and help educate what the program's about, what these mental health issues really mean, and help to provide a much more supportive environment. You're actually going to be seeing the level 2 gym spaces, and in the distance you see a courtyard where the therapy spaces are, and we actually do have outdoor individual smaller group therapy spaces in these protected landscape zones. Natural environments, again, Kim pointed out the design guidelines. You'll see a lot more of the wooden panels, the wooden fins, some boardwalk areas, some natural stones, preserving planting and trees, space around the trees where we're keeping the trees as well. I wanted to share a few of the sort of simple concept diagrams that sort of drove us. And, you know, when you consider some of the spaces that we have here, the gym is actually a multifunction space where you could hold events, you can have sports activities. It becomes kind of the heart of the project. And a number of the classrooms and other spaces occur around it. But the way you go between those spaces, the landscaping, the flow of water through a site can be very important to the healing process. And even looking outside of a window to green spaces has been shown to actually improve your attention span and get you more alert back for the session, and helps you actually absorb more of it. And it helps you to, you know, avoid fatigue. Because let's not forget, the staff that are working here all day long, seeing appointments, there is an issue of staff fatigue that we want them to have respite. We want them to have areas where they can actually break away from their individual meetings and just relax and recoup and regenerate a little bit themselves. So it sort of led us to start creating these courtyard spaces, these sheltered spaces. Now, most of the buildings you could see from the site plan, they're fairly rectilinear. They don't necessarily respond to the site themselves much, and they're mostly focused on the smaller rectangular spaces that you have inside them. But we have a very simple idea in the beginning of saying, what happens when you actually look at the site and the views in the valley, and you sort of treat this as a two-sided, more concentrated, embraced view in the courtyards, and then on the outside where the curves open up, it opens out more to the landscape and the views. So we thought that was a very simple move, and how you actually brought all these program pieces together, and we were able to separate them. As Kim had said, the residential is in the most private side of the site down at level 1. That's at the lowest portion of the site. The least amount of foot traffic goes down to that point. That is the most private. The middle portion with the gym, shared spaces where they all come together, that's right in the middle on level 2. But joined. And they're joined, and you can circulate across courtyards or through the building itself. So it really gave us the ability to sort of look out around the building and see those views, and some of these offices, for example, in the clinic therapy spaces, the individual offices, therapy offices, actually views out to the surrounding landscape. But then the group classrooms are more focused on the courtyards and embracing a smaller scale of space. But you can see here how that dining and gym really is in the middle, and it's really shared, and it helps to divide the more private residential spaces from the more public therapy and conference spaces. I know this is a bit of a simplistic diagram, but Kim mentioned this too, that by terracing the building down the site, we're able to reduce the apparent mass, and we're able to sort of really make this building feel more like it's a series of 1- and 2-story elements, and also, you know, open out those views to the surrounding valleys. You've seen this is the entrance. We wanted a fairly welcoming, sheltered entrance, but we also wanted it to be glassy enough so that when you walk in, you kind of walk into that lobby and you see through into these courtyard spaces, even as you go to the left to the therapy spaces or to the right to the conference spaces. We wanted it to be transparent, and we wanted people to be able to feel like they were becoming part of that courtyard environment, even when you step into the main lobby of the building. This is actually a little bit more realistic rendering. That is the existing tree, the Beehive Tree, within that one of those courtyard spaces. We created walkways around these courtyard spaces that you can go more directly between them, or you can take a more meandering path as well. Again, give people here a variety of sensory experiences as you go between different planting areas or different functions of the building. The idea is to be able to go inside out. Obviously, the climate, maybe not with the smoke right now, but the climate is typically very pleasant to be outside. We're trying to create shaded areas, and we're trying to use those natural materials to relate to the site. This is a view of the central gym area, and there's some planting gardens where we do expect some of the residents and some of the people in group classrooms to be able to actually take part in planting and taking care of the plants and watching things grow as well. Particularly if they're there for several weeks. You know, obviously the goal is to be appropriate for every individual, but we wanted them to be able to have activities that they could be involved in within these courtyard spaces. This is a view from above looking back into those courtyards, and the large tree that you see over on the left is, this is part of the residential, more private courtyard. This is the gym space in level 2. But again, you can see as you look around the building, we wanted this to have somewhat regular rhythms where the glazing and the wood panels have a rhythm across the building. We do have a series of some of these fins actually do help shade some of the glazed areas. So we're trying to use them to also reduce heat load, reduce the energy use of the building itself. Kim had mentioned some of the decks, and the decks that we actually have are both shown in this picture. And I just wanted to point out that they are actually just for staff as respite spaces due to safety concerns with students as well. But the staff, say off some of these admin office areas, are able to take a break, go outside, enjoy the view, get a little bit away from their actual work environment, regenerate a little bit, and then go back in. But again, trying to give them spaces where they can be part of the building, but also view and feel like they're in the landscaping as well. But the decks are above ground so that they are secured and away from the courtyard spaces, but open to staff. So really, when you kind of put it all together, again, you have more very comprehensive package of drawings. I'm just trying to sort of show you some more of the conceptual images that brought about that design. But the main entry up here in the embrace, the comfort of the therapy spaces on the right side, the gym shared space in the middle with the dining. There's actually a covered dining area between the gym and the indoor dining area as well up on level 2. And then of course the residential rooms down here on level 1 that will actually look out over the valley. And these are the most private spaces, and only the residents themselves and staff will be able to go down to this level 1. I wanted to share a little bit of the character interior spaces. I know that the project is more about the exterior site and massing, but Kim had mentioned the laminated timber. And it's actually an important thing for us to be able to express that material. Part of the guidelines do talk about natural materials, and we are actually going to be exposing many of the laminated beams. This is actually the main lobby space where you come in, and we want it to be very comforting, but again, open to the courtyard spaces on the right. You can check in at reception, and then through the hallway beyond, you can actually go to the therapy spaces. But simple palette of colors and materials that relate back to nature. And Montage actually does have a fairly significant art program where we would want to be able to show and display relevant pieces throughout this project. And again, try and create more of a welcoming, comforting, calm environment. I'm going to just show a couple more spaces. Our waiting area, again, we had talked about the fact that the courtyard space on the right is where some of the group therapy outdoor spaces are, but the waiting area, we wanted it to also be able to see the structure of the building, see the exposed laminated. Even the floors are actually where they're raised up. They're actually a mass timber deck. They're solid timber decking, and it's all prefabricated, so it's coming out to the site in larger panels and it doesn't all go together very quickly. So we found it to be more of a sustainable, natural approach to the building product, trying to reduce the amount of concrete that we're actually using in the building itself, with concrete being such a high carbon content. This is actually kind of the heart of the shared space, the gym. Again, exposed timber structure, very open to the surrounding courtyard spaces, multi-purpose space, can be used for sports, yoga, therapy, and also even dining. Just bringing it back to, you know, the sustainability story, the fact that we're trying to use more natural materials, we're trying to really emphasize the preserving the trees as much as possible, using more natural colors. The roof itself will, as I was saying earlier, be a more darker gray. The woods will have more natural stains, but they're not painted colors, they're more stains, and so you actually really see and appreciate the wood itself. And this, although the model is a little bit outdated, this still gives you that sort of stepped approach. And I think this actually, the contours here start to really show how the building, as Kim had mentioned, is really trying to pull away from those steeper site areas and push itself up towards Lower Ragsdale and away from the highway. And when you're on most of this site, you don't see the highway at all. And we did do some views from the highway to show, you know, what portions would be visible or not. But the lower part is also a large retention pond, which we did not want to do anything with or build on the steep slope there as well. But I just wanted to share all those images with you to kind of give you a bigger context, as opposed to some of the more technical drawings that are in that package in front of you. And as Kim had said, we do have the landscape architects online as well, if you have any more detailed questions for myself or them. So thank you.
Are there any questions? I have a couple if nobody has any.
I do too.
Go ahead.
I just wondered if you could address what's been done to, you know, keep the project as environmentally low impact as far as energy use, water use, greenhouse gas emission, that type of thing. If you could just, you know, get into the sustainability, and I'm sure that it's extensive, but it's something I haven't heard of yet. So thank you for that.
Sure. Maybe to try and address the energy use at first, because the building itself is going to be a high performance building. The glazing, for example, will be double glazed, insulated high performance glazing. There will be significant insulation in the roofing to try and, again, preserve the heat. The actual energy of the building, the heating and cooling, trying to do it with as minimal impact as we can, and trying to keep it more natural in terms of not increasing that load. That's kind of the first step towards reducing and making it more sustainable, by reducing that energy use, using very efficient mechanical systems. We do not have large air handling units pumping large amounts of air through ducts all around the building. We have much smaller interventions, smaller units that are distributed so that they're simpler, and they actually feed the building without these massive ductways that you often see, these, you know, cooling towers and giant plants on top of buildings. We wanted to reduce the amount of that, and so really all of it is integrated in the building. And you can see from this view, there are no rooftop mechanical units. And that's another way of trying to distribute it and get the heating and cooling where it needs to be throughout the building, and not central and piping as you might do in a very large campus facility. Obviously, water use, very efficient fixtures that we're going to be employing in the building itself. And clearly, you know, this might be a tie-in to Beth, because you know, the water use is such an important issue on the project here. And it does have a significant outdoor space. So Beth, perhaps you could talk a little bit about how we're preserving using drought tolerant planting, etc.
Oh, definitely. Thanks, Lori. A requirement by the city and by the state is that all water use for irrigation be calculated and meet a certain parameters. And the plant palette that we've selected that's shown on our planting plans is mostly either native or environmentally adapted plants that function well here on the peninsula and are low water using plants. So from a water use perspective, our annual estimated water use for irrigation is well under the criteria that the state requires and what the city has allowed in terms of the available water credits for our site.
Did that cover it, Patrick?
Yeah, thank you for that.
Justin?
No.
Okay. I have a couple questions about where are the materials going to be coming from? I'm just interested to know where you're going to be sourcing them for the building and what that looks like. And I also have a question about maybe not, I don't know if Lawrence, you can answer this, but we're talking about adolescents and I know there's a residential program. And what is the age group of the adolescents that are able to spend the night? I know that there's been some talk about what that looks like and then the age of adolescents that can do that. And so I'm just curious if that's children or young adults or what that age group is.
I'd say the main target group is from the ages of about 8 to 18. And we actually did run through scenarios when we were actually doing programming of different patient ages and, you know, what kind of facility might be required for each one. And that was found to be the sort of most demanding age group. And, you know, obviously, adolescents start to act out at an earlier age, you know, that's when the treatment starts. But the idea of the facility is more about preventative treatment and trying to catch it early. And so the residence is, this is, as I was saying earlier, it's not an actual clinical facility. And these are not for extreme cases and they're not medicated cases. And, so, you know, that might happen at the emergency room or in the hospital itself. So that's really the age group that we found the demand was most relevant to this kind of a program on this site.
Can you talk a little bit about where the materials are going to be coming from?
Oh, sure. We've, you know, the mass timber, let me just start with, you know, what we were trying to avoid in terms of the concrete by using as much of the mass timber for the laminated framing. We're using actually a fairly innovative company, and unfortunately, it's not well developed locally. So we're bringing some of these materials from further north in the northwest, and then the wood of the exterior is also coming from overseas for the fins, just because of the quality of the wood and the length of the finishes that are on the project and sort of the lengths of the material we're using itself. We're obviously trying to source much of the finishes and local companies to fabricate and install much of the interior finishes and working with suppliers with local contractors. So there are a variety of sources, unfortunately, with a project like this that we do need to go a little bit further afield than we might want to, just to get the quality that we need.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, let's open it up for public comments.
That call-in number for public comment is 831-582-6500. Once again, you will be muted upon entrance to the call, and you can press *5 to flag us and let us know that you're ready to speak. Right now, we do have no public commenters. So I'll leave it back to you, Chair.
Okay. Maybe we'll wait another 30 seconds and see if anybody calls in. I will close public comments, and if anyone calls in, we'll certainly be happy to hear their comments. All right, we'll open it up for committee member comments. Does anybody want to start?
I'll start. I think it's a fantastic project, lovely execution. It's a much needed resource for the community. The presentations were a pleasure to watch, and I can't wait to vote for it.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead and say a few words. It's fantastic presentation, both from Kim and from Lawrence. Thank you both for the time you put into that. And also commend the clients here. And I think it's a combination of a private and nonprofit partnership that's bringing this building to fruition. But my wife works with school kids as a counselor in the local school district, and I can't tell you how often she bemoans the fact that kids in our area are being sent up to San Francisco and San Jose and, to other facilities because we simply can't accommodate them locally. So programmatically, this building is just crucial to our area. And to lay on top of that, this just magnificent piece of architecture. I mean, it's arguably the best thing we've seen locally since the aquarium. And I think it's easy to get wrapped up in the sculptural form and the siding, which is just beautiful. But there's also a lot more depth here. The materiality, the use of wood on the facade, the roof, and the efforts that you've gone through to make that roof clean and not mucked up with mechanical equipment and roof jacks. And that's not easy to keep the purity of that form and carry it through. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of challenges as you go into construction documents to maintain the integrity of that building. But there's a lot of work and a lot of thought that went into this building. And it's really a blessing to the area. And in that sea of sort of concrete stucco boxes out there in Ryan Ranch, to see this gem, it's pretty cool. So thank you guys for the thought and effort that you put into it. And thank you to Montage and the team that financed this for bringing it to the county.
I'd like to second what Justin and others have said. These have been excellent presentations. Thank you, Kimberly and Lawrence. And I think it's a beautiful design. Having been out there, I think this is going to sit in the environment beautifully, very thoughtfully and very well done. And as Justin said, I think this is a wonderful contrast to just kind of the sanitary stucco boxes stuck out there in Ryan Ranch right now. That this is going to be a very good project and certainly very much needed in the community.
I'd like to echo what my committee members said, and this building to me is a work of art. If there was a coffee table book of this building, I'd probably buy it. So, and more importantly, it fills a void in our community that has just been really kind of frankly embarrassing, that we don't have the facilities to take care of these kids in this age bracket. And so this is going to solve some problems for us as a community that I think is just really important. So thank you all for being part of this project.
Thank you.
And I will say, not to sound repetitive, but given the magnitude of the project, I think it bears. I appreciate all the thought and work that's gone into what is a really important building and a very beautiful building. I think it's going to look amazing up there, and I think I'm fascinated by the way that spaces can be constructed to help, in this case, the therapeutic quality of what the programs are trying to achieve. And so, yeah, again, not to sound repetitive, but I think given this project, it was worth continuing to give praise to those who have put this together.
I just have to say that I'm really proud that we get to be a part of this and we get to have a tiny piece of our hands on this and watch it in the very early stages. It's quite beautiful and amazing, and I can't wait to see it done. I think it's just amazing, and we're so blessed to be able to have something like this in our community, to be able to help our children and the future, and it's incredible. So thank you for all your good work. I will take a motion for approval.
I'll take a stab at it. This is
Go
Pat.
for it.
Consider 6-star Ragsdale ARC application ARP 20-0208, new adolescent behavioral health center, and tree removal application ART 20-0207 for 10 tree removals.
That should be a motion for approval, right?
Yes. Yes. Motion to approve that.
I'll second.
And I'm sorry, was that Vice Chair Bluth that seconded it?
Yeah.
Correct.
Awesome, thank you. And for the roll call, we have Chair Carter,
Aye.
Vice Chair Bluth,
Aye.
Committee Member Connor,
Aye.
Committee Member Hunter,
Aye.
Committee Member Polly,
Aye.
and Committee Member Tregenza.
Aye.
Thank you. That was everyone. Back to you, Chair.
Great. This motion carries, and it can be appealed to the Planning Commission within 10 days. We are so excited to see this work.
Well, thank you all. And I've personally committed to actually being involved through the whole construction, so I'll get to see it all grow up with you as well.
I hope that we can get out there and see it maybe during the construction or.
Yep. I'd be happy to take you on a tour, provided we're all able to meet again at some point soon.
Great.
Just a quick question. When will the project complete?
We're going to be starting construction in January, provided all our permits and everything go smoothly over the next few months. And then it's about a 20-month period of construction after that. So sometime in the fall of the following year.
And I'm assuming you have a contractor in place?
Yes, we do.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I would love to see the progress if it's possible.
Yeah, I'd be happy to work with Kim to arrange the appropriate times and do that.
All right. Are there any other committee member comments today? Are there any other staff comments?
No, Chair Carter.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to adjourn our meeting at 5:09. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Aye.